So imagine you have this duffel bag sitting right in front of you.
Just a totally normal, unassuming canvas bag.
Yeah, exactly. But inside is exactly $100,000 in cash.
Which sounds like a dream, right?
Right. You're sitting there thinking about what you could do with it. Like you want to buy a luxury jacket or maybe upgrade your life with some incredibly rare antique maps or, I don't know, just put a down payment on a fancy new car.
But you can't.
No, you cannot spend a single cent of it because this money is dirty.
Right.
And I don't mean like physically unhygienic. I mean, it is the direct proceeds from illegal drug sales on the streets of a major city.
And, the moment you realize that, the cash ceases to be a windfall. It transforms into a massive physical liability.
That is the core problem. You can't just stroll into a bank and hand the teller $100,000 in crumpled $20 bills.
No, the moment you try that, automated alarm bells ring, suspicious activity reports get filed, and federal agents are basically knocking on your door.
Exactly. You certainly can't stuff it into a suitcase and take it on an international flight without risking a massive seizure at customs.
Which is a huge issue if your bosses in another country are aggressively demanding their profits.
Right. You have to get the value of that cash across the world without tripping a single financial alarm. So how do you move it?
Well, you are describing the ultimate logistical nightmare for organized crime. And actually, it is the exact puzzle we are investigating today.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Our mission for this investigation, based on all the sources we've been going through, is to map out a completely invisible underground network.
Yeah, we're looking at a system that successfully moves an estimated $4 trillion globally every single year.
$4 trillion. That's just...
It's massive. And the truly astonishing part is that it manages this insane volume of wealth without a single actual dollar ever crossing a physical border.
The scale of it is just difficult to comprehend. We are pulling from an array of sources today that detail this centuries-old, trust-based value transfer system.
A historical practice that has somehow, metastasized into a modern shadow banking network.
And this network connects wildly disparate worlds. I mean, we're talking about Mexican drug cartels, illegal wildlife syndicates,
corrupt government officials.
Yeah, and legitimate global real estate, all operating right under the nose of the most advanced financial surveillance state in human history.
To really grasp how modern cartels are laundering millions in drug cash today, we first have to understand the architectural foundation of the network.
Right.
And to do that, we actually have to travel back in time to one of China's golden ages, the Tang Dynasty.
Okay, so picture the scene. You are a highly successful tea merchant during the Tang Dynasty.
Business is good.
Business is incredible. You live in a rural, mountainous province, but you travel all the way to the sprawling capital to sell your harvest. You sell out your entire inventory to the nobles and the urban elites.
But there's a catch. You get paid in standard copper coins.
Right.
And the fundamental physical property of copper is that it is heavy.
Incredibly heavy. You now have a massive physical burden. You are exhausted just looking at these sacks of metal.
And worse, you have to travel hundreds of miles back to your home region carrying them.
You're essentially a walking billboard for every highway robber and bandit on the road. The physical nature of the money is your biggest vulnerability.
Exactly. So the merchants realized this was totally unsustainable, and they developed a revolutionary workaround.
Right, the paper.
Yeah. Instead of hauling the metal across the country, our tea merchant takes his heavy bags of copper to a trusted broker right there in the capital city.
He just hands it over.
He hands over the coins, and in exchange, the broker gives him a single, lightweight, easily concealed piece of paper.
Just a piece of paper with a sum written on it.
Precisely. The merchant travels back home safely, completely unburdened, and when he arrives in his rural province, he visits the capital broker's trusted partner in his home region.
Right.
He hands over that piece of paper, and the local partner gives him the exact equivalent of his harvest in local copper coins.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like a decentralized bar tab.
That's a good way to put it.
Like, imagine running up a tab at a bar in Beijing, and your brother pays it off at a partner bar in Chicago.
Yeah.
The entire ledger is built on an unbreakable foundation of personal clan-based trust.
Completely.
The two bar owners, the brokers, they just trade a keg of beer next month to settle the difference between themselves. But, I mean, how does a brilliant practical system built to help ancient tea merchants survive dangerous roads end up servicing modern violent drug syndicates?
Well, the evolution of the system is really a story of migration and survival. This system of value transfer spread globally alongside the Chinese diaspora over the centuries.
Okay.
As millions of Chinese immigrants relocated throughout the world, they faced, severe persecution, segregation, and institutional exclusion in their new countries.
They were basically forced into financial isolation.
Totally locked out of traditional formal banking systems. And isolation breeds self-reliance. Chinatowns across the globe became these vital commercial hubs.
Right.
Because they were excluded from official channels, these tight-knit communities leaned entirely on their core cultural values: reciprocity, family ties, and above all, absolute trust.
So they're running cash-intensive businesses and using this ancient system.
Yeah, often referred to as feikan or flying money.
Right, flying money, using it to send earnings back home to their families in mainland China.
Exactly. For generations, it was a completely legitimate, deeply necessary cultural refuge.
But the architecture of that refuge, like its total invisibility to outside authorities, that was eventually discovered by groups who desperately needed to hide massive amounts of wealth.
And that is the tragic pivot. A system built for community survival was eventually co-opted by organized crime because it offered the perfect cloak.
Which requires us to look at how this ancient trust system functions today.
Right. In our modern world of artificial intelligence and encrypted tracking, it relies on a mechanism called mirror transactions. And this is the exact intersection where legitimate money unwittingly swaps places with absolute bottom-of-the-barrel cartel cash.
Okay, let's ground this in a real-world scenario from our sources. Let's meet Mr. Chen.
Okay.
He is a wealthy businessman living in China. He makes excellent money, completely legally. And he wants to diversify his wealth and buy a beautiful $2 million luxury apartment in Miami.
Sounds nice, but Mr. Chen has a geographic problem.
Right, the government policies.
Yeah. In 2017, the Chinese government implemented strict capital flight policies. You cannot legally move more than $50,000 out of the country per year.
So Mr. Chen has $2 million clean dollars in China, but he needs $2 million in Florida.
And traditional international wire transfer is impossible.
Completely impossible. So he turns to the underground banking network. He visits a broker in China and transfers his $2 million into the broker's domestic Chinese bank accounts.
And he might do this in small increments to avoid local suspicion, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the origin of the money itself is totally clean. The Chinese broker then gives Mr. Chen a set of instructions. He says, tell your cousin who lives in the United States to go to a specific shop in Chicago, ask for my trusted contact, and give him a special alphanumeric code.
Now, meanwhile, in that exact same city of Chicago, there is a very different financial puzzle playing out.
Oh boy.
A drug dealer working for a Mexican cartel has just finished a major distribution operation. He is sitting on $2 million in physical cash.
Ah, the duffel bag from our initial thought experiment.
The very same.
Yeah.
This is purely dirty street cash. It has no paper trail and no legitimate origin.
Right.
He needs to get the value of this cash back to his cartel bosses in Mexico.
Right.
So he goes to the very same U.S.-based Chinese broker that Mr. Chen's cousin was called to visit.
Wow.
And the cartel associate hands the $2 million in dirty cash to the broker.
Okay, let's unpack this. If I'm tracking the sequence correctly, Mr. Chen's cousin walks into the shop in Chicago, gives a special code, and the U.S. broker hands him $2 million in cash.
That's right.
But that cash is the cartel's street money. Now, wait a minute. If the cousin takes $2 million in cartel street cash and starts depositing it to buy a Miami condo, doesn't that trigger the exact same IRS alarms we talked about earlier?
You would think so.
Like, how does he get that into the banking system?
You're hitting on the crucial obstacle, and the solution is a process called smurfing or structuring.
Smurfing?
Yeah. The cousin doesn't just walk into a Chase bank with a duffel bag. The U.S. broker often provides a secondary service.
Okay.
They use a vast network of family-owned, cash-intensive businesses. Think nail salons, restaurants, laundromats.
Ah, right.
They break the $2 million down into thousands of tiny, inconspicuous deposits, blending it with legitimate daily cash registers.
So it just looks like the restaurant had a really good week.
Exactly. Over a few weeks, that money materializes in a clean corporate account, ready to be wired to the Miami real estate agent.
Wow. So this completely legal investor just inadvertently laundered cartel drug money.
Yep.
Mr. Chen's perfectly clean money never left China. The cartel's incredibly dirty money never left the United States. They just mirrored each other.
Exactly.
Mr. Chen gets his condo. But hold on. The ledger is now dangerously out of balance.
Yes, it is.
The Chinese broker received $2 million from Mr. Chen, but the U.S. broker gave away $2 million to the cousin. And the cartel in Mexico is still sitting there waiting for their drug profits.
Right. The Chinese broker essentially owes the Mexican cartel $2 million.
Okay, so how do they fix that?
Well, to settle this massive debt invisibly, they utilize the sheer scale of the global economy. Specifically, they use trade-based money laundering.
Trade-based laundering. Okay, this is where the math gets incredibly deceptive because the money completely disappears into everyday commerce.
Completely.
Walk us through how a shipping container settles a drug debt.
Okay, so the Chinese broker operates a legitimate-looking front company that exports kitchen appliances, let's say refrigerators.
Okay, refrigerators.
And the cartel in Mexico operates a front company that imports and sells retail appliances.
Convenient.
Very. The cartel's front company places a massive official order for $10 million worth of refrigerators from the Chinese broker.
So we have 10 million in physical fridges crossing the ocean.
The Chinese broker ships the goods, but here is the trick. On the official customs invoice, they deliberately doctor the paperwork.
Ah.
They only charge the cartel's front company $8 million for this shipment.
Oh.
The cartel receives $10 million of actual physical value, the refrigerators, but they only have to pay $8 million for it out of their clean accounts.
And that $2 million phantom gap is the invisible settlement.
Wow.
The cartel sells the refrigerators at market value in Mexico, recouping their initial drug profits in perfectly clean, legitimate pesos. The debt is settled. The ledger between the brokers is balanced.
But, I mean, why wouldn't customs catch a discrepancy like that? If you were shipping $10 million in goods but claiming it is $8 million, shouldn't border agents notice?
Well, consider the scale of global shipping. There are tens of millions of shipping containers moving across the ocean at any given moment. Right, it's a massive volume.
Customs agencies have the resources to physically inspect maybe 1 or 2% of them.
That's nothing.
And even if they do open the doors, what do they see? Refrigerators. The physical items match the broad description on the manifest. The crime isn't in the box. The crime is in the spreadsheet.
The crime is in the spreadsheet. That's wild. The value is entirely in the paperwork, not the product. The money didn't move. The value just flew. Flying money.
Exactly.
And because this shadow banking system relies on everyday global commerce, it is entirely agnostic to what is actually being trafficked.
Right, it doesn't care.
It ends up connecting wildly unrelated illicit industries.
Which introduces one of the most surreal examples found in our research, the intersection of marine biology and the opioid crisis.
Yeah, let's dive into the totoaba fish. This is an endangered marine species found in the Gulf of California off the coast of Mexico. Specifically, the underground market is hunting for its swim bladder. Now, this fish bladder has absolutely no proven medical benefits, but it is highly prized as a massive status symbol in traditional Chinese medicine and among wealthy elites.
It's literally referred to as the cocaine of the sea.
Yeah, because a single kilo can sell for tens of thousands of dollars.
The profit margins are astronomical. Naturally, the Sinaloa cartel, recognizing a lucrative commodity in their own backyard, takes over the poaching business.
Of course they do.
They organize local fishermen to harvest these endangered fish. Let's say the cartel manages to stockpile $6 million worth of totoraba swim bladders.
Right.
This isn't dirty street cash, but it is deeply illegal product that needs to be monetized.
So the cartel coordinates with a Chinese broker operating in Mexico to smuggle half of the harvest, so $3 million worth, across the Pacific into China.
Yep.
Once it arrives, the Chinese mafia distributes the swim bladders to their wealthy clientele. The Chinese syndicate now has $3 million, and they owe the Mexican cartel for the raw product. But sending $3 million in cash across the ocean is too risky. How do they settle it?
Well, the Chinese mafia doesn't send money at all. Instead, they send a chemical compound called fentanyl bromide.
Fentanyl bromide.
Yeah, fentanyl bromide is a completely legal agricultural and industrial chemical, but it also happens to be a critical precursor ingredient required to manufacture fentanyl.
It is a devastating, morbid barter system. They are literally trading endangered fish bladders for the building blocks of a global fentanyl crisis.
It's terrifying.
And the entire exchange happens without a single dollar crossing an international banking wire.
And we still have to account for the other half of the fish harvest.
Yeah.
The cartel still has another $3 million worth of totoraba bladders. They smuggle that half into the United States, handing it over to a U.S.-based Chinese broker who sells it to the domestic diaspora market.
Okay, so now that U.S. broker owes the cartel $3 million, But let's compound the problem.
Okay.
Remember our street drug dealer from Chicago?
The guy with the duffel bag.
Yeah. Let's say the cartel also drops off $10 million in pure street drug cash to that same U.S. broker for laundering.
Okay, so the U.S.-based broker is now sitting on $13 million of debt owed to the cartel. $3 million for the fish, $10 million for the drug cash.
That is a lot of debt.
Yeah.
Right.
So the broker in the U.S. messages a trusted partner in Mexico on an encrypted app, essentially asking them to front the money.
Right.
The Mexican partner pays the cartel $13 million in pesos. The cartel is paid and happy, but now the U.S. broker owes their Mexican partner $13 million.
So how does the U.S. broker pay the Mexican partner without sending a wire transfer across the southern border?
They turn back to the global trade system. The U.S. broker operates a legitimate electronic storefront.
Okay.
They place a massive official order for $14 million worth of generic electronics from a Chinese company, which is actually a mafia front.
Okay.
The shipping containers arrive in the U.S. The paperwork clearly states $14 million.
But you actually pry open those boxes, you aren't finding high-end laptops.
Not at all.
You are finding cheap knockoff tablets and fake watches. Maybe $1 million of actual retail value.
Exactly $1 million. They paid $14 million for $1 million worth of junk.
Wow.
That $13 million overpayment is the invisible transfer of wealth. The U.S. broker puts the cheap tablets on their store shelves to maintain the illusion of a struggling retail business.
But wait, the U.S. broker just sent $13 million in surplus value to a Chinese mafia front. How does that settle the debt with the Mexican partner?
Because the Chinese mafia front and the Mexican partner settle their own ledgers separately?
Ah, I see.
Because remember, that Chinese front is likely the exact same syndicate shipping the fentanyl precursor chemicals to Mexico.
Right.
They already have an ongoing massive trade relationship.
Yeah.
They simply wash the debts against each other's accounts. It is a closed global loop.
That is insane.
What's fascinating here is how the single, seamless shadow network connects everything. You have struggling fishermen pulling nets in the Gulf of California, Italian mafias offloading euros in Rome, cartels in Sinaloa pressing pills, and unassuming electronic storefronts in New York City.
All connected.
The money is everywhere, but fundamentally, on paper, it is nowhere.
Which brings us to the ultimate question of modern enforcement.
Yeah.
We are talking about an estimated $4 trillion in illicit proceeds flowing annually.
Yeah.
That represents roughly 3 to 5% of the entire global GDP.
It's massive.
In an era where governments track our digital footprints, utilize sophisticated artificial intelligence, and monitor blockchain ledgers, how is a system based on handshakes and paper ledgers surviving?
Because zero tech beats high tech.
Right.
You cannot hack a ledger that only exists in the minds of two people trusting each other. Traditional digital surveillance is virtually useless against a network that operates outside the digital realm.
So how do you fight it?
The only way to crack this is through old-school human intelligence. HUMI-NT. Our sources highlighted the incredibly dangerous work of investigators like Andre Acosta.
Yeah, Acosta's operation is remarkable. He basically founded an intelligence agency for Earth to combat things like elephant poaching.
Oh, right.
But his team quickly realized that the wildlife poachers were using the exact same financial networks as the drug cartels. The shadow bank doesn't care if you're removing rhino horns or heroin.
Exactly. So Acosta's team understood that algorithms wouldn't cut it. They had to recruit rare, Chinese-speaking undercover operatives.
And the work requires agonizing patience.
Unbelievable patience.
We are talking about months of deep undercover work, posing as corrupt businessmen, just to secure a casual coffee meeting at a Starbucks in Mexico City with a mid-level trafficker.
And the physical reality of that fieldwork is intense. Costa's team eventually earned enough trust to rub elbows with corrupt airport customs officers in Mexico.
Wow.
At one point, during a 6-hour dinner meeting fueled by tequila, a corrupt officer felt comfortable enough to brag.
Just brag about his operation.
Yeah. He showed the undercover operatives how they move physical cash through the airport using special invisible dyes that make the money completely undetectable to the airport's security scanning equipment.
See, you do not uncover invisible dye on cartel cash by running a data scrape on banking transactions.
Exactly. You find that out by sitting at the table and risking your life to earn their trust.
Right.
But this heavy reliance on human intelligence exposes a massive systemic flaw in how our Western institutions fight global crime. It is fundamentally an issue of mismatched incentives.
So what does this all mean for us? Why are our institutions failing to catch up?
Because law enforcement agencies operate within political environments. Agencies like ICE or Border Patrol are rewarded for quick, highly visible statistics.
Right, a massive drug bust at the border makes the evening news.
Yeah.
It generates a visceral photo op for a press conference.
Yeah.
When agency directors sit before a congressional committee to justify their annual budgets, they need hard numbers. Kilos seized, arrests made.
They need a return on investment within a political election cycle. But taking down a flying money node requires the exact opposite.
Right.
It requires years of patient funding. It requires undercover operatives working for months with zero immediate public relations payoff, mapping out a trust network that might ultimately just lead to a doctored refrigerator shipment in a port thousands of miles away.
So culturally and institutionally, our law enforcement agencies are not structured to play that long game.
No, they aren't. Criminals are highly motivated by profit, and they have infinite patience to wash their wealth.
Right.
We are trying to dismantle a multi-generational, culturally ingrained trust network using quarterly budget cycles and press conference metrics.
We are fundamentally misunderstanding the battlefield. Flying money is the ultimate ghost in the global machine.
It really is.
It is a brilliant Tang Dynasty-era solution to heavy copper coins that has successfully outmaneuvered the most advanced financial surveillance states in history simply by avoiding the very concept of moving money.
It totally forces us to reconsider the accuracy of the world we see.
It really does. Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over. Let's go back to that duffel bag of dirty cash we talked about at the start.
Some $100,000.
Yeah. That money has to go somewhere. It has to be absorbed. If 3 to 5% of the entire world's GDP is made up of these invisible, trust-based criminal proceeds, maybe our traditional definitions of the economy are fundamentally flawed.
I mean, that is a staggering proportion of global wealth operating entirely in the dark.
Exactly. When we watch the news and we hear about official economic metrics, banking data, stock market fluctuations, reported national trade deficits, are we just looking at a curated illusion?
It's a scary thought.
Are we living in a financial matrix, completely blind to the massive multi-trillion-dollar parallel universe, quietly dictating global power, moving value right beneath our feet without ever making a sound? Something to think about the next time you see a massive shipping container full of cheap electronics.